Hey guys, welcome to TCRS Book Club. This is episode 2. The reason I've got to wear this cap is it feels like when I take it off, then the camera won't focus on me. I'm not sure if it's because of the light blue shirt. The green screen does tend to exclude blues and greens, and I guess this is a kind of blue and green, right? Timmy, I may need to put you down when I need to sort of read from this book. So this is one of the books that we're going to look at, Fruit of a Poison Tree, and it deals with the horrific murder of a student, Inga Lotz, and this is her. I don't know about you, but sometimes it feels like we're just going through different versions of Gabby Petito and Kylie Rodney. It just feels like we're just seeing a slightly different face, right? That is coming to grief in a certain way, doesn't it? So that is her, Inga Lotz. I think she was 19 years old. Yeah, there's another picture of her. You can see she's a very attractive Afrikaans girl. She was at the University of Stellenbosch, which is quite near to Cape Town. That's another picture of her. That is the imputed murder weapon. That's not a conventional hammer. That side of the hammer is actually a bottle opener. And yeah, so it's slightly different. There's another picture of her. Okay. Timmy, I think I'm going to have to put you down, I'm afraid. Okay. So we're going to be dealing with an excerpt from this book. And there's one more image I do want to show you, and it's the image that you see on the book cover. I hope I can actually find it here. Oh, it's this one. So actually, if you look at that image, it's the same as the image on the book cover. And what you assume from this image in the book cover is that it's just her. You can see there's a little bit of black above her shoulder. Well, that is this part of the image. So it's not actually her by herself. It is actually this image of the two of them, herself and her boyfriend at the time of the crime. That's actually been sort of divided into two, right? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to be reading an excerpt from this book, Fruit of a Poison Tree. And I personally think that this is excellent true crime writing. And I'll talk to you guys a little bit after we get through some of it. So I'm going to the beginning. I'm going to the prologue, page 1, right? So often the question comes up, where on earth do you begin with a true crime story? Do you begin with the date that someone is born? Do you begin with the sentencing? Do you begin with, where do you start, right? Think about Jeffrey Dahmer, that documentary. How did that start, right? It actually started with the scene that led to him being captured. But it is quite an important question. Where do you start your story? The same thing with the Gabby Petito Lifetime movie. You might say, I don't care about the Gabby Petito Lifetime movie. I didn't watch it and I've got no interest. Me as a narrator, I do care. I sort of wonder, how did you approach the story? Where did you start it from? And all that kind of thing. And that's actually something I want to come back to. Just a quick hi to everyone that's here: Deborah, Renee, Terry Dean, Zenaida, Pauline says, I think I remember the story from long ago. It's kind of the Scott Peterson's South Africa Scott Peterson story. It's a very high profile story from about 20 years ago. Okay. So are you guys ready for a read through? Okay, so this is Fruit of a Poison Tree, written by Antony Altbeker. And we're going to start right at the beginning with a prologue, and it's on page 1. The video begins with a shot of a doormat and the bottom quarter of a door. Okay, I'm gonna have to stop there. I just want to go and get my reading glasses. I'd rather do this justice than sort of struggle along. Give me a second, I'll be back in a moment. Okay, I wonder if it's going to allow me to take my cap off, because I'd rather have my cap off. Let's have a look. So far, so good. Okay. Okay, prologue, page 1. The video begins with a shot of a doormat and the bottom quarter of a door. A muffled off-screen voice says in Afrikaans, "It is March 17, 2005. The video operator is Inspector Desmond Share. I am at Klein Welgevonden Estate, 21 Shiraz, Stellenbosch. The video begins. Two shadowed legs move into frame. A hand swings the door open to the right, and a shaft of light falls onto a doormat before the camera bounces into the room. The cameraman steps over a yellow strip of plastic bearing the blue-printed legend, South African Police Service, do not cross. We are in a small kitchen of plastic-coated processed wood. As the camera turns to the left, before it pauses on the empty sink and the kitchen counter, on which lie a pair of sunglasses, a set of car keys, and a cell phone, before it is pointed into a half-open straw basket in which we see something indistinct, a book or a large envelope perhaps, before it scans the walls and curtains of the living areas beyond the kitchen, before it does all that, it captures a tangle of hair hanging over the arm of a small sofa. From the doorway, it looks like a young woman, having fallen asleep watching the television set in the corner, is lying on a light-colored couch, her legs curled up in front of her. The woman doesn't move as the cameraman goes about his business. The camera turns to the kitchen, exploring it intrusively, forensically. A drying rack contains a single plate and mug. An oven glove hangs squarely, inch perfect, in the middle of the oven's horizontal handle. Pressed neatly against the wall are a kettle and 2 bouquets of plastic kitchen implements, sprouting from matching stands. It is a compact space, and the housekeeping is prompt and conscientious. A waist-high counter separates the kitchen from the lounge. When the camera turns in that direction, we see once again the tangled hair of the woman on the couch away to our right. Another couch, dark blue with red cushions, has its back to us. There are also 2 uncomfortable-looking wooden chairs with high back and armrests. Between the woman and the TV set in the corner, a small coffee table with a pile of books and magazines stands in its shadow on a carpet. A black DVD cover lies empty and splayed on top of the books and magazines. On the wall to the left hangs a painting that appears at first to be an abstract of a human head, but which turns out to be an unremarkable image of a vase and flowers. Below it stands a pot plant, dark and green and healthy looking. A decorative bunch of dried grass bristles in a corner on the far side of the couch on which the woman lies. On this side of the couch, between it and the camera, a cloth-covered side table is home to framed photos of family and friends, along with a small glass dish of sweets. In a moment, the camera will reveal that the sweets, the carpets, the coffee table, and some of the walls are spotted with blood. These spots, a police forensic expert would testify nearly 2 years later, sprayed from the woman's head as if from a fountain when she was struck by the blows that killed her. They did not fly off from the weapon as it was swung. An unnecessary detail, perhaps, but it is one that has its ramifications. I'm not going to read much further than that. I might read maybe a little further, maybe half a page further than that a little bit later. It is actually, as you go just through the prologue, it is shocking, it's horrifying, it's written with incredible precision, but it is definitely very disturbing. It's very disturbing content. I couldn't help feeling when I was reading the story itself, but also dealing with some of the crime scene photos. I couldn't help feeling that I was inside the Amanda Knox case, because you have a lot of similarities through both cases. Thanks, Deborah. So what did you guys think of that opening? Did any of you think it was dull? Did any of you think it was dry or something? What did you guys think of that opening? Yeah, it is, that is to me how I would want to write true crime. That is how I would want to start a story. What you obviously get from Altbeker's approach is someone who's incredibly au fait with the facts. He's someone who pays attention to detail himself. He's a detailed person. A lot of writers of books are. You get a sense of precision, of perception, of the right perspective, right? So coming out of this case a little bit, I'm going to give you a little bit of backstory into something else. Yvonne says, it's like we are in the room. Yeah, it's very visceral, isn't it? So when I was working on the Henry van Breda case, what I was hoping to achieve was pretty much exactly that. I sat in on the trial. I was in the courtroom. And when the case concluded, we were told that the discovery would be made available. And so what happened was I personally, with another investigator, went to the archive room and I said, I'm here to study the discovery. And we were both rebuffed. We were sort of told, no, well, we need the judge to sign off on this. And we said, well, he has. And she said, well, not to my knowledge. Without going into too much detail, we spoke to the prosecutor, we got passed on and so on, but ultimately, I never got the discovery. I did say, I can't come back tomorrow or next week or something because I don't live in Cape Town. But basically, I was there to view the discovery. I also wanted to see the same thing, the same video footage. But I was rebuffed, as I say, not because it wasn't allowed, but because apparently the archive person didn't know or whatever. And then it was something like the next day, but it was very soon after that, an Australian television company actually showed it on television. So the person telling us, you may not get access to this, must have passed it on to to an Australian television channel because it was literally on like the next day or shortly after that. And but that is exactly how I would have wanted to open one of the books on Henry van Breda, is with that kind of, you've watched the video footage. Obviously, you can't show that video footage to your reader. You also can't screen grab it. You in fact cannot, in some cases, you can't take that discovery out of the building. But what you can do is absorb it in your mind, and you can kind of record it in your mind. You could maybe also take notes, and then you can create a narrative which basically reanimates, recreates that video, right? But that was really the situation that me and another investigator tried to get exactly that sort of thing. And, ultimately we didn't. Description is everything, yeah. So I'm going to read you another half a page, and then we're going to look at something else, okay? The flat's rooms are conservative and plain, a little characterless even. They belong to someone of quiet, conventional tastes, or to someone whose tastes have not yet developed. And it may be this seamliness, this unquestioning obedience to the conventions of the middle class that makes so overwhelming the sight of the woman's bloodied body. She lies on a couch with her head resting in the crook between its puffed up backrest and its padded arm, her face turned toward the wall to her right. She's wearing a sleeveless yellow vest and satiny sleeping shorts. Her legs are open, but the soles of her feet touch each other almost from heel to toe, with her heels tucked into the gap where the two cushions of the couch meet. Her left hand rests lightly on her thigh. The right lies across her stomach. It is a pose that will be described by the pathologist as being typical of someone who has died after massive trauma to the brain. In life, wakeful and dressed in these clothes, her pose would have seemed indecent, incongruous in so conservative a home. But she's not alive. The woman's upper body is a picture of suffering. And then I'm not going to read further than that. So I've got to say, some South African true crime writers are very good. This is one of them, Antony Altbeker. I really recommend this book. Sharon Conroy, good to see you here. Melsa says, it's like I'm there. Now, do you know one of the reasons why the narrative is so powerful is through very deft touches. He's actually describing the woman before he actually describes her, right? In other words, you are getting a sense of a person through a place, and that's really important. Pauline says, I wonder if she knew who struck her before she died. Deborah says, I must get this book. KMS, hello from North Texas. Okay. So, although I'm not going to deal with a book any further, I'm going to wander a little bit into this case, right? I don't really want to go into the details too much. I wouldn't be doing the case justice, but I do want to wander into two areas of this case briefly, and then we'll move on to something else. The one area I want to wander into is an important piece of evidence. I'm going to show you that by referring again to the book, and then we'll look at an image, and then I'm going to take you through a little bit of intertextuality in the Amanda Knox case. And then we're actually going to look at a letter that Inga Lotz wrote to her boyfriend on the day that she died, on the morning that she died. We're going to read that letter and then just see what that tells us. In other words, we're going to get a sense of this woman in her own words. In another sense, we're going to get a sense of what the recipient of this letter may have been thinking and feeling when he read this letter, right? Okay, Angela says, I'm going to have a read on this book as well. Okay, so in this book, there are no color photos, but there are a couple of images. And around about halfway through the book, you can actually see there's a shoe over there. It's got a distinct pattern at the bottom of the shoe, right? And you can see that's a shoe with no blood on it. That's something else. That's a pattern left on the tiled bathroom floor, right? There is another sample of that pattern, which the narrator, the guy who wrote this book, describes as it looks like a scorpion. That's sort of the description that it gives. Now, if you didn't get a good look at what I've just showed you, don't worry. We are going to get a better look by looking at this image. So if you have a look at that, it sort of does look like a scorpion. It looks like it's a print made in blood. And that is a close-up of a section of a shoe, right? This is the same thing in color. So if you thought that doesn't look like a scorpion, there you can see it sort of got that kind of going on over there, right? So can you see why I said it feels a bit like the Amanda Knox case? Here is a bathroom mat. I think that's a towel on the floor which had blood in it. But this looks like some kind of imprint, right? This is a close-up of a shoe. And I think I've already showed that to you. Okay. So in the Amanda Knox case, you had a similar scenario where you had basically, I think, two sets of shoes. The one set of shoes was of a certain size, and then you also had what appeared to be half of a footprint on a mat, and then the other half was either wiped away or just not there. But you also had this notion of bloodied footprints, right? Now, one of the early things that comes up in the narrative is something that's quite mysterious, which is, and you haven't gotten to it just yet in terms of the description that is given. The first thing is that the television was on when they arrived there. The second thing is that the remote is sort of balancing precariously on her knee, right? And then I guess the third thing is that she actually has a magazine open at her feet. And what all of this to me conspires to argue is, were those things, did they sort of fall into that position naturally or not? Now, if you think about it, someone is, let's say, watching television and there's a violent incident. Do they end up with a remote control still on their leg, right? That's the first part. The second part is, how on earth in this situation do you end up with a magazine sort of open on the sort of carpet underneath? And my again, without knowing this case all that well, my guess is that someone wanted to approach the victim, but he didn't want to step into the blood directly under the couch. And so the intention was to put the magazine as a kind of stepping stone, right? And maybe wanted to touch the victim in some way or remove something. And in the motion of doing this, although a shoe or a foot or whatever it was mostly avoided stepping into the blood, this particular image suggests that some part of footwear may have or must have made contact with that sort of bloody area under the victim's legs, but basically right next to the couch. Does that make sense? Yvonne Phillips says no. What do you mean no? Someone says, were they placed there by the killer? Angela says, I don't think so. So that is an element that adds mystery to the story, right? Something that you would say, oh, okay, so this happened. There's definitely other things going on. It also looks like whoever committed the crime went to the bathroom and it appears used a towel to wipe off the murder weapon. Obviously, that then leaves an imprint of the murder weapon in the towel. I think it was a white towel. I think 2 towels were used, and then also, I think, washed his hands in the basin. As I said, feels like certain aspects from the Amanda Knox case, right? Melsa says, I can see that. I'm not sure what you mean. Or are you saying, can I see that? So that's the first part to mention. Now we're going to deal with the letter. So that's the actual letter. It's unreadable, but even if you could read it, it is in Afrikaans, so you wouldn't be able to read it anyway if you could. But what is quite interesting is there's like a long version of a letter and a short version of the letter, which is quite strange. That's another aspect that's quite intriguing in this case. And now I'm going to show you the translated long letter, and this comes from a website called truthforinga.com. So if you want to read up on this case, you're welcome to go and have a look at that. So we're now going to read this letter. Can you guys see that? So this is a letter written from Inga, that's Inga on the left, to Fred, that's Fred on the right. Dear Fred, this letter is going to be a bit more difficult than email. I can't delete and make changes over and over, but I must get these little things off my chest this morning. I'm sorry you left here this morning so confused. I was initially unreasonable and consequently the whole thing got out of control. Firstly, about you and your brothers, I pray that God will give you wisdom on how to handle the situation and that you will always be able to resolve the issues between you. Remember, I'm always there if you want to talk, and I very much want to be part of your life and try to understand what you are going through. The little things that are bothering me at this time, I'm really sorry about some of the things I said this morning. My biggest mistake over recent times must have been to find my security and solution to my low self-esteem in you instead of in God. I haven't realized it up until now, but God has unbelievable ways to speak to one, and I now realize that I have been the unreasonable one and not you. Further, I'm extremely scared of the Easter weekend and that you will see my father when he has had too much to drink. I don't want to lose you in such a way, and I don't want you to see that side of my family. It must sound silly, but it's really a big concern to me. And lastly, Just the little things, the usual little things, work, CT1, which is financial mathematics. Am I going to get a job? What am I going to do with my flat, etc., etc. Flat is another word for her where she's staying, right? Her residence. It sounds silly when I write it down on paper, but it's only right that you know what is going on. I don't want to keep bothering you with the same issues. Sorry that I sometimes forget that you're only human. I look up to you so much and have such great respect for you, your opinions, and the way you handle problems. I don't always realize that you also have bad days and get hurt sometimes. I don't always know how to support you and if you even need or want support. I don't understand how you handle hurt. You will have to teach me how to understand you and how to support you. I feel that I disappoint you if I can't do the things I mentioned above, and that you deserve to have a beautiful girlfriend who looks good, who can cook, and who is in all respects just as perfect as you are. I struggle sometimes to get there. Perhaps this is what is the most difficult for me. I know that you don't expect it of me, but then you must please show me how I can be the perfect girlfriend for you. I love you very much and I don't want to look any further. Tomorrow it will be 1 year since I fell in love with you. The first Wednesday afternoon that you alone came over and had coffee with me. And since that day, I have not doubted for one moment that it is you I want. You have enriched my life in so many ways, and every day with you is the greatest gift that anyone can dream of. You need never have doubt again for one moment that I'm absolutely committed and that I want with everything within me to be with you forever. I want to promise you today that I will not depend on you for a good self image and for security, but that I will take it to God and that I will support you in everything that you do and that I will be absolutely honest with you about all aspects of my life. I can also promise you today that I will, with God's grace, always remain faithful and that I will never cheat on you, and then that is scratched out. I will never do anything behind your back. I love you with all my heart, and I have no doubt that I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Strength with everything at work. All my love, Inga. So, are there any things that stand out to you in that letter? Are there any things that you want to comment about? Are there any things that um, stuck out to you just in that first read through? Very good. Mel Stiller says she's very apologetic. Jody says she has no confidence in herself. I would say low confidence in herself. Um, Deborah says Inga is very much in love with Fred. Sharon says blinded by love. That's a really good comment from Diamond Eyes. Very good comment. Yeah, she's blaming herself. Terry Dean says she seems quite smitten and like she's not good enough for him. So this is what I want you to think about. We've been reading this from the perspective of, well, we just sort of eavesdropping on the letter. But think about what these words would mean if you were the paramour, if you were the her love interest, right? Imagine you are the man in her life and you're reading the following. I can also promise you today that I will, with God's grace, always remain faithful and that I will never cheat on you. And then that's scratched out. I will never cheat on you, but it's actually scratched out. And so, what does that mean? Or what does that infer to mean? I will never cheat on you, scratched out. Doesn't that mean I will cheat on you? But she corrects that to say, I will never do anything behind your back. So what I'm trying to emphasize here is, bear in mind that she died on the same day that this letter was written. What I'm trying to emphasize here is the potential significance of that and that. Okay. Yeah. So Jody says, well, maybe she already did. So my perception is that pretty much this entire letter is to communicate two or three things. Number one is she's trying to soothe him. She apologizes over and over. She tries to convince him over and over that she's very committed to him. She tries to encourage him that she is supportive of him and supportive of his family. And she's even apologizing for how her own family behaved. Now, you might think that that sounds like a person with no self-esteem, but it could also be someone who's trying very hard to soothe someone else, someone who's upset, right? So SW Firefly says open relationship. No, she's quite conservative. Yvonne Phillips says, did she cheat? That's what one needs to look at. Okay, so I'm not going to go into the case in too much more detail than I've already gone into it. You guys are already asking certain questions. I'm not going to go into the case in that much detail. I'm going to go through the letter again and just highlight a couple of things, right? So this is from Truth for Inga, a verbatim translation of the handwritten long letter. And if you want to read it, it's at this link. If you want to sort of go on your own and read it. So this is what she says. The letter is going to be a bit more difficult than email, but that's what she's thinking about. The way that you open your salutation is really speaking about what the heart is thinking about. She's thinking, I'm in a difficult situation. She also says, I must get these little things off my chest this morning. Do you think it's a little thing? She's saying it's a little thing, but she's also saying it's quite difficult. So on the one hand, I think she's trying to minimize something. On the other hand, doesn't it seem like she's trying to soothe, right? Then she says, I'm sorry you left this morning so confused. That's the first sorry. She says, I was unreasonable and the whole thing got out of control. We don't quite know what that's about. She talks about all of these things. She says, I very much want to be part of your life and try to understand. Again, I'm really sorry. That's the second time. She talks about my biggest mistake. It's another way of saying sorry. Talks about unreasonable again. I'm unreasonable, not you. I'm extremely scared. A big concern. So there's kind of anxiety playing out. Then she says sorry again. It's the third time. She says, I've got such great respect for you. I don't know how you handle hurt. I feel that I disappoint you. I struggle sometimes to get there. I want to be the perfect girlfriend for you. You never need to have doubt again. I want to promise today that I will, and she says something else about that. Then she says, I will always remain faithful. I will be absolutely honest with you about all aspects of my life. What do you think is the significance of that? I will never cheat on you, and it's scratched out. I have no doubt that I want to spend the rest of my life with you, right? And that is in the context of I must get these little things off my chest this morning. Do you think it's a little matter that they're sort of discussing? Okay. So the reason she's apologizing isn't because she's got low self-esteem. It's because she, I think, is apologizing for something else. She's trying to soothe him. She's trying to calm him down. I'm not sure what the answer is to that. Okay. So that's that. It's a very well written book, this one, and it's a more intriguing story than you might imagine. As I said, it's kind of the Scott Peterson of South African true crime. I'm now going to take you through a book that I wrote. It's called Bloodline. It's not available. This book is not available anymore. There were a couple of problems like this. So there's a page with a sort of a mark right over the writing. So I actually asked the publisher to withdraw it. But this is the first book that I got a publishing contract for from America. And so I'm going to read to you guys from chapter 1. How long is chapter 1? I think I can read the whole of chapter 1 to you guys. Okay. So if you like this style and you like this kind of story, it is available on Amazon. So basically, this is like an epic. It's how many pages? Over about 540 pages. You can get about a fifth of this book on Amazon. It is available. So it's broken into fifths, right? So I'm going to read chapter 1, and it's titled The Race. Okay. The rocket flares difficult to see through thick cycling snow, but not the roar. The roar makes our swords, the castle stones underfoot, and the air in our lungs vibrate. I stand twisting my neck to follow the flare through the silent white noise. It's been a long time since we saw or heard one of them. I wish with all my heart I could be on one of those Baikonur rocket ships. When the guttural growl of the rocket disappears, the rumble of ice takes over. I glance at the great ring. That slow-moving wall of doom stretches from eastern horizon to western horizon. It dominates every field of view. It blocks wind and water. Each day it advances 10 or 20 feet. And soon this last tower of man will be no more. Soon everyone here will be dead. The ribs of Stain's bow crackle as he draws the bowstring back. I duck nervously at the sound, watching as he tilts the arrow head down slightly. I carefully approach the edge of the tower wall. A fur-clad figure advances. Hold on, I hear Ulysses speaking to Stain. Stain releases the tension on his bowstring, but only slightly. It's difficult to see. Something's not right, Ulysses says in a silver voice. Snowflakes large as eyelashes swarm slowly. The figure continues to shuffle minutely across the snow far below us. Flakes gather and shift, pulled by cordless curtains. The tiny form reappears beneath swirling sheets of snow. Look at the size of the steps, and she's not armed. Stain sniffs and lowers his bow. Aye, it's just a girl, pretty too, under all that fur. The figure glances back, stumbles, and begins to run. The curtain concealing her tears open at the east. Shite, look at that! Ulysses puts his fingers to his lips, and a piercing whistle cuts the air. Fweet! Fweet! The hillside behind her erupts with wolves, 50, 100, 200 wolves. She pushes down her hood. A small head with raven black hair bounces with ambition. Stain quickly lifts his bow and fires an arrow. The figure falls. 3 more archers, summoned by our leader's whistle, rush against the wall. They draw their arrows and fire. They fire again. Stain's first arrow sails and sails and hits the front wolf. It's an impeccable shot. Drifts pause long enough to let through her terrified screams. Through the haze we see her arms waving as she runs. The wounded front wolf yelps, but 30 more black wolves are quickly closing in. 3 individuals stop and begin tearing the first wolf apart. Stain shoots a second, third, fourth arrow. Each takes a small eternity to penetrate the gaping space. Incredibly, when the curtain lifts, 3 more animals lie dead with 3 shafts, 3 black fletchers poking the air above their heads. Only half the arrows from the other 3 archers hit their marks. Armstrong, Panda Bandit, and Bosenhagen curse. It's clear the galloping wolves will reach their prey before our archers can empty their quivers. She's not going to make it, Stain says to Ulysses. But Ulysses is no longer here. What do you guys think of that? Ricardo says very theatrical. Melster says beautiful poetry. So what I might do, but it depends on you guys, is I might read from Bloodline every book club, right? It's my book, so I can read from my own book and I can read the whole book. So I might do that. If you guys want me to, I can definitely, the chapters are quite short. That was chapter 1. So I can definitely make that part of what we deal with. Thanks a lot, Pauline. So if I can indulge you guys in a little bit of history behind this book. This book actually started when I was about 16 years old. And it took me about 2 years to write it in the form that it was. And I actually finished the book on the morning of my matriculation, my senior science exam. So I finished the book and then I went and wrote my final exam in science and I got the lowest mark for that. I think I got an E. Well, part of the reason for that was I wasn't studying science, I was writing a book, right? And obviously what you've just read there wasn't what I wrote when I was at school, but what the substance of this book and basically the plot line of this book I conceived when I was at school. And my mother died actually shortly after I wrote, or actually while I was writing this book. I then went to the Air Force, and the manuscript of the book I put into a pizza box, and somehow the pizza box ended up in the garage of our home. And somehow my father ended up driving over the pizza box over a period of weeks and months. And the book, my first book, became basically a pulp that wasn't usable. So that's what happened to that. And so for a very long time, I felt the loss of that narrative. And I think it was around about 2010, somewhere around there, that I thought I'm going to write that book again. So that book had sort of lived with me for around about 30 years, the idea of the book. And so obviously I was a better writer after being a magazine journalist for 10, 15 years. And so I thought, let me try and write that book now. And it took something like 2 years again to write the book. And I really made a study of writing. I studied Tolkien, I was looking at what is the best writer in the English language, and also how has writing changed since the time that he wrote a book. So I really did a study of writing, and also the themes that I was trying to express. And I think it was through that I got to know really big names in philosophy and psychology, like Joseph Campbell and Ernest Becker. And they helped me to navigate the symbolism that I wanted to imbue the narrative with. So, yeah. Yvonne, if you'd said, oh no, if only you'd kept the original pulp, probably I would never have written the book, because if I'd had that pulp all along, how I wrote when I was 16 years old maybe wasn't bad, but definitely wasn't good enough. So, but all of those sentiments were still there. A big inspiration for Bloodline was Highlander, the movie Highlander. And so you can see some of the artwork of the book. You can see that's the Eiffel Tower that's fallen over, and that's a drone that's scanning. So it's got a very dystopian sort of theme. And you've got that same thing repeated on the inside of the book. There's the Eiffel Tower that's sort of fallen down. And the idea behind this book is basically life goes on after the end of the world, the literal end of the world. And also this idea that the entire infrastructure of your life can be destroyed. Towers, buildings, rooms, everything that is your life can be destroyed. But if you're alive, then there is still something that you can work with, right? That's really the psychology that I was trying to use, but on a epic scale. Writing a good book is like giving birth to giants. Yeah, I mean, writing books is like having a child, I think. Okay, so that is Bloodline. Another book by a South African author that I'd recommend is Disgrace, J.M. Coetzee. There is kind of a crime aspect to this book. I think he won some kind of prize for this book, winner of the 1999 Booker Prize. As a young writer, I thought I'd like to be J.M. Coetzee, just a very astute, intelligent, accomplished, intellectual powerhouse kind of thing. And of course, he got publishing contracts and I didn't. He got university posts and I didn't. So I wonder if you guys want me to read an excerpt from this book? Let me start by reading from the back cover. Disgrace is a subtle, multi-layered story as much concerned with politics as it is with the itch of male flesh. Coetzee's prose is chaste and lyrical. It is a relief to encounter writing as quietly stylish as this. Also a masterpiece, perhaps the best novel to carry off the Booker in a decade. That's pretty high praise, right? So this is the plot based on what's on the back cover. After years teaching romantic poetry at the Technical University of Cape Town, David Lurie, middle-aged and twice divorced, has an impulsive affair with a student. The affair sours. He is denounced and summoned before a committee of inquiry. Willing to admit his guilt, but refusing to yield to pressure to repent publicly, he resigns and retreats to his daughter Lucy's isolated smallholding. For a time, his daughter's influence and the natural rhythms of the farm promised to harmonize his discordant life. But the balance of power in the country is shifting. He and Lucy become victims of a savage and disturbing attack, which brings into relief all the fault lines in their relationship. There's another review here, a great novel by one of the finest authors writing in the English language today. Pretty high praise, right? Okay. I'm just going to read the first 2 pages. This is from Disgrace by James Coetzee, winner of the Booker Prize. Chapter 1, page 1. For a man of his age, 52, divorced, he has, to my mind, solved the problem of sex rather well. On Thursday afternoons, he drives to Greenpoint. Punctually at 2 p.m., he presses the buzzer at the entrance to Windsor Mansions, speaks his name and enters. Waiting for him at the door of number 113 is Soraya. He goes straight through to the bedroom, which is pleasant smelling and softly lit, and undresses. Soraya emerges from the bathroom, drops her robe, slides into bed beside him. Have you missed me? She asked. I missed you. I miss you all the time. I think I need my glasses. Have you missed me? She asks. I miss you all the time, he replies. Okay. He strokes her he strokes her honey brown body, unmarked by the sun. He stretches her out, kisses her breasts. They make love. Soraya is tall and slim with long black hair and dark liquid eyes. Technically, he's old enough to be her father, but then technically one can be a father at 12. He has been on her books for over a year. He finds her entirely satisfactory. In the desert of the week, Thursday has become an oasis of, not quite sure how to say this, lux et volupte. I guess that's the luxury of something that's voluptuous. Not quite. Let's check what that is. I'm not as sophisticated as James Coetzee. Lux it is volupte to do with voluptuous, or not getting a translation. Oh, here it is. It translates to translate text. I thought I just did. No, it's not German, it's French. Oh, it's just luxury and pleasure. Couldn't you have just said that? Luxury and pleasure. Luxury and sensuality. Okay, so that's what it is. Okay. I don't know if I want to read too much of this. In bed, Soraya is not effusive. Her temperament is in fact rather quiet and docile. In her general opinions, she is surprisingly moralistic. She is offended by tourists who bare their breasts, udders she calls them, on public beaches. She thinks vagabonds should be rounded up and put to work sweeping the streets. How she reconciles her opinions with her line of business, he does not ask. Because he takes pleasure in her, because his pleasure is unfailing, and affection has grown up in him for her. To some degree, he believes this affection is reciprocated. Affection may not be love, but it is at least its cousin. Giving their unpromising beginnings, they have been lucky, the two of them. He to have found her, she to have found him. His sentiments are, he is aware, complacent, even uxorious. Nevertheless, he does not cease to hold to them. For a 90-minute session, he pays her 400 rand, of which half goes to discreet escorts. It seems a pity that discreet escorts should get so much, but they own number 113 and other flats in Windsor Mansions. In a sense, they own Soraya too, this part of her, this function. He has toyed with the idea of asking her to see him in her own time. He would like to spend an evening with her, perhaps even a whole night, but not the morning after. He knows too much about himself to subject her to the morning after, when he will be cold, surly, impatient to be alone. That is his temperament. Anyway, I'm not going to take that any further, but as you can see, it's a pretty compelling story as well. It ends up being quite a disturbing book, I have to say. It is pretty disquieting. Very well written, but also it does reach into you further than you might expect. No, it's not Latin, it's French. French and Latin are actually quite similar. So these are two other South African books that I want to sort of juxtapose. This is obviously Afrikaans by one author, and then this is English by another author, the Krikwerstad Murders. I must say I've met this author. Did I? I'm not sure if we met or if we just corresponded. I actually don't think we've met in person. But he's an ex-journalist. Fantastic book. Very, very well written book. So I think these are two very, very well written books on true crime. And both, how can I put it? I don't know. There's sometimes a sense that South African crime is kind of at an order of magnitude. It feels like worse than in other places. The Krikwerstad Murders is about I think a 15-year-old who kills both parents and his sister. So it's kind of like the Chris Watts case, but committed by a teenager. And there are worse things in addition to that. So yeah. Okay. Look at some of your comments. Okay. Do you guys want me to go through a couple of reviews? I don't want to be on here for too much longer. I see it's already over an hour. Let me just see if I can find it. Okay, I'm going to share with you guys something that was quite weird. I actually got a email from Russia. This is how it reads. I wonder if I should put it onto the next page. Okay, maybe I can. So basically, it's from someone in Russia, and they wrote the following. My name is Marina, and I'm a foreign rights executive at nonfiction department called Bombora at the leading publishing house in Russia, Exmo. We got interested in your book, Neverest New Insights, Inside Scott Fisher's Mountain Madness Expedition. Now, if you know that book, you know that it involves the Russian climber, Anatoly Bokreev, right? He kind of emerges as the hero in that story. Now they're saying, could you please advise if Russian translation rights are available? We would be happy to receive a PDF for review. And should we contact you directly or via a literary agent? Thanks in advance. Kind regards, Marina. So obviously there's a kind of a thought, is this a scam or whatever? But it does seem legit, doesn't it? And so I guess the next step is, I don't know, possibly brokering the Russian rights for that particular story. So we'll see. Jody says, will you be reading any pages of your Oscar book? It's on my to-buy list. I suppose I could, but I won't be doing that today. but I suppose I could do that at some other point. Okay, I just want to see if I can find book reviews that I meant to go through. Let me just see if I can. Oh, yeah, it is. Okay. So I want to take you guys through a couple of book reviews from Deceit. I mentioned the Amanda Knox book earlier, right? It's from this book. Okay. And we're going to look at, and I'll put that the link to that in chat. Yvonne says, why did your book have that symbol on that page? Yvonne, I actually had symbols throughout the book. I had everywhere where there's a new section, there's a new symbol. So I don't know if you can see, it says here part 5 extinction. There's a symbol that is watermarked there. There's another one. Let's see if I can find it. Well, there's another one, I think, right in the beginning. Part 1, can you see that there's a kind of a watermarked symbol there as well? So it's actually trying to find Celtic symbology and also other symbols. And so I've watermarked it into each section. And unfortunately, that particular symbol wasn't watermarked. They basically stamped it over the text. I think here's another one. Oh, no, I've gone through that one. Here's another one. A lot of the Celtic symbols are sort of a weaving pattern. So there's another. That was what it was supposed to look like, something like that. I think the one that they got wrong is kind of like the classic Celtic cross, I think. Stephanie says, so sorry for just rejoining now at a family obligation. Thanks for joining us. So there's not too much left for this episode, maybe 20 odd minutes. I want to take you guys through a couple of reviews from this particular book. So the first one is The Devil is in the Details. Actually, I think I want to start with a negative review. Let's start with a negative review. Okay. Can you guys see that? So the most popular review for this book, although it's got a 4 out of 5 rating, is this one. And it's got 61 kind of endorsements. 61 people found this helpful, right? So let's kind of go through it. This book is trash from top to bottom. Amanda Knox and solicitor had no involvement. So in other words, it seems like it's trash because of a particular slant, I guess. Many American experts have studied the case and they are breathing fire. The whole saga was little more than a medieval witch trial. This was in fact a tragic but very simple crime. Meredith was murdered by a local thug. The experts who have condemned the trial and police investigation include 3 retired FBI agents, an American judge. I think one of these retired FBI agents is John Douglas, an American judge, 4 CBS documentaries, a Pulitzer Prize-winning New York Times journalist, and many other respected writers. So in other words, what he's kind of saying is big guns, far bigger than you, have told this story the right way. This is trash. Then he says, one of the FBI agents, John Douglas, is probably America's leading expert on homicide investigations. The judge, Michael Heavey, described the proceedings as a witch trial being prosecuted by a delusional prosecutor. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. And then that, and then it goes on. Oh, there we go. Nick van der Leek represents himself as an expert on crime. The fact is that no crime in history equates to what the prosecution and the author allege. What else does he say? Yeah, so then he then it's the above is all nonsense. No DNA or other physical evidence was found. And then he says, please also note that the positive reviews written above immediately after the release of the book were probably written by the author. So he thinks that if there's any positive review, I must have written it, right? So that's that. Now let's deal with, so that, would you agree that that's quite a scathing review, right? So now let's go to the very next review. This is from Melissa Manzella. She says, don't miss this one as it's a really good read. This is not just written by me, it was written by Lisa Wilson as well. Truly do justice here in providing the reader a well-rounded overview of this case, while still being generous with detail in the critical areas. Both well-researched and written, Deceit is an excellent refresher course on trial facts in what became an exhaustive adjudication. Trying the patience of even the most enthusiastic of trial watchers. A good amount of insight is also offered into who Knox really was. From the author's opening sentence where he quotes Knox, I was naive enough not to understand that bad things can happen. I was hooked. From there, the reader is introduced to Amanda, right? And so anyway, there's that one. Then there's this review from Star Force, The Devil is in the Details. Simply the best book on the case, hands down. Post-murder behavior is the #1 indicator of one's guilt or innocence. The world is 25 years behind itself. I don't know if I'd agree that post-murder behavior is the #1 indicator, but I think it is an important indicator. So I think there's another one, where to start. Let's see if I can find where to start. I think it's this one. So this is also a review for Deceit. I began reading Nick's books with the Chris Watts case. They are by far the most comprehensive and interesting true crime books available. Each book is filled with links that lead to photos, videos, documents, and more. Although I'm pretty familiar, in some cases very familiar with most of these cases, I can't wait to read about each case again through Nick's telling. His research is so vast and fascinating, it is truly as if I am reading about each case for the first time. Do not hesitate to purchase and read. You will not be disappointed. And so on. So quite a world of difference between these reviews. And ultimately, I'm quite happy that despite one review getting 61 endorsements, it's quite nice to see that overall it seems to have quite a high rating, 4 out of 5. The original title for that book was actually Doubt, and then there was some problems trying to actually get that book published. And anyway, it ultimately was reborn. Doubt was reborn as Deceit, and then I used the Doubt title in the McCann series of books, and I think it actually worked out very well. I think Deceit was a good title for that particular narrative, and I think Doubt was the best title for the Madeleine McCann story. So it actually worked out quite well in the end. Interesting comment from Pauline. But that is the stock and trade of true crime. You'll see the most scathing, horrible reviews, and often you can clearly see that someone's like, I think that person's innocent, that's why I hate your book. Or I think that person's guilty, that's why I hate your book, because you don't. They don't really, in the review, they don't tend to argue an argument. They tend to just be, I hate you and I'm going to discredit you because I disagree. They don't really say, over here you made an argument that doesn't really make any sense, which is unfortunate. Okay, I'm gonna, I think, end off. I see we're approaching an hour and a half. I've got two books here, both on Casey Antony. Which one do you think I recommend? Presumed Guilty by Jose Baez, or unfortunately this one doesn't have the original cover. Justice, sorry, it's what is it? Imperfect Justice by Jeff Ashton. So before I make any recommendations, what have any of you guys read any of these books? Have any of you guys read Presumed Guilty or Imperfect Justice? Deborah says, how could a person review a book and call it trash? So Ricardo says Jose Baez. SW Firefly says, I would love to read the one by Jose Baez. LC says, I'll have to go back and watch this. Deborah says neither. So you might be surprised. I was interested, obviously, in both. That's why I bought both. But I thought Presumed Guilty by Jose Baez, I thought was a much stronger narrative, just more interesting. I think because Jose Baez has so many personal reactions, direct interactions with Casey, with her parents. And so he truly does have the inside track in terms of that case. I don't think you've got to read his book and agree with everything he's saying. You can also be like a fly on the wall kind of thing. So, I can read the book of a defense lawyer, and although there are certain areas that I totally disagree with him, you can nevertheless get a sense, well, this is an important narrative. This is an important narrative. This is educational, interesting, insightful. And so it does have some utility. You don't always have to agree with something to get something out of it, right? That's just my response to that. 70 says, I'm not that surprised. Okay, I wonder where we can sort of end things off. I wonder where we can end things off. Have you guys got any questions? Maybe we can read an excerpt from this, right? Sorry. Deborah, yeah, it is on Kindle. It's on Kindle. Stephanie, can you maybe help her out with that? Okay, so this is The Krikwerstad Murders. It's the last book we're going to kind of go through quickly. I'm just going to read basically 2 pages. It's by Jacques Steenkamp. It was also a fairly recent high-profile case. Chapter 1. Just after dusk on Good Friday, 6 April 2012, the streets of the small northern Cape town of Griekwestad were deserted. The town, with its rich history, consists of several dilapidated buildings on either side of the N8 highway, which have saved it from becoming totally forgotten. Hundreds of tourists and truckers pass on a daily basis through the town on their way to either Kimberley in the east or Uppington in the northwest. Apart from them, the only other people who frequent the town are the farmers who live in the region and the few families that remain loyal to their heritage and refuse to pack up and leave for the cities. Chinese traders have taken over most of the businesses in Griekwestad, though here and there a local resident is still trying to make a living by running a small supermarket or the like. The only profitable business seems to be the sale of alcohol, as the town has plenty of stores where this can be purchased. Founded in 1805 by two members of the then London Missionary Society, William Anderson and Cornelius Kramer, as a station before being established as a town in 1812, Griekwestad is best known today for the semi-precious stones, such as tiger's eye and jasper, which are found there. Although the town itself is small, the surrounding sheep and cattle farms that fall under its jurisdiction make up an area of approximately 77 square kilometers, with an estimated population of about 4,000 people. The majority of the inhabitants, about 80%, are colored, descendants of South Africa's first settlers, the Khokhoe and the Bushmen. And on this Christian holiday, Good Friday, the whole of South Africa became aware of the existence of Griekwestad. It all started when a 15-year-old boy named Don Steenkamp sped into town in his father's white Isuzu double cab and screeched to a halt in front of the town's nearly deserted police station. It was shortly before 7 o'clock when Don jumped out of the vehicle, dressed in black rugby shorts and a t-shirt, and ran into the station's charge office, covered in blood. As soon as he entered the one-story building where two police officers were holding the fort, the boy fell to his knees and screamed, "You must come. They've been shot. They are all dead." Warrant officers Antony Wilt and Klaus Roy, who were standing behind the long wooden counter in the station's charge office, didn't expect anything like this to happen during what was usually a quiet shift. It was a gruesome sight. The boy's hands and face were covered in blood. What made it even worse was that Don was known to them and was his family. As was his family. Confronted by the possibility of three brutal murders, the officers were momentarily frozen in shock. They tried to absorb what Don, who seemed unable to stand still, was shouting at them. On the brink of manhood, and the obviously traumatized boy still wore braces on his teeth and had short brown hair. Warrant Officer Roy guided Don out of the charge office through a door on the right, which led to the office of the station commander, but he then turned left and took the child to the back of the building instead. They would have more privacy there in the courtyard, between the police station and the holding cells. Gently, Roy asked the boy to explain what had happened, and Don stammered that only minutes before he had found both his parents and younger sister shot and killed in their family home. He told Roy that he had gone to the barn while they were watching television. Shortly thereafter, he heard gunshots. He had then hid for some time. So that is from the Griekwestad murders. Terry says, can we do book club except it's just Nick reading the whole thing to us? Stephanie, you may have missed what I said earlier was I don't mind reading an excerpt from this book every episode. So far I've read one chapter, so I can definitely do that. Maybe I can even read, because the chapters are quite short, I can even read 2 chapters. Lisa Breck, thank you so much. So the reason that I think all of these books are so well written this one, this one, the one by Antony Altbeker, this one, is because invariably these are all former journalists. These are people who didn't just write books for a living. They've written lots of magazine articles. They were either still are or were full-time mainstream media journalists, that the people that are shunned by social media, the mainstream media, oh, are you a reporter? These people are excellent writers. I'm not saying every journalist is a good writer, but a lot of journalists who write books learn their trade as reporters. Jacques Steenkamp wrote for one of the biggest South African Afrikaans newspapers. I think it is the biggest. And what that teaches you as a reporter is you've got to be like a news hound. You've got to pay attention to those details. And they then carry that aptitude, that attention to detail, that thing where you absorb the information. They carry that into a lot of these cases. And that's exactly what they need. Attention to detail. Detail matters. Also, the ability to take all of those details and it's one thing to know all of this information. It's another to know how to put it into a narrative, how to pace your narrative, how to fit it into a narrative. In other words, you have perspective on all of that detail. Okay, I think we've got about 3 minutes to go. Audrey says, I enjoyed your analysis of Amanda Knox's psychological profile and the John Benet Ramsey case. Thanks a lot for that. Angela says, don't suggest homework. So another book that I do have with me is this one. And I'm sad to say that I'm struggling to read it. This is written by, I think, a very well-respected journalist. He's written for the BBC, The Economist, The Times of London. He's written other books as well. I'm just struggling to get into it. You guys want me to read the opening page of this book and just see if you think you find it interesting? So shall I do that? I'll read the opening, the prologue. Actually, I'm not going to read the prologue because it talks about spelling. You guys want me to read from chapter 1? I'm not going to read more than like one page. So let's do that. And tell me if you feel like you would want to read further. Okay. Chapter 1, Baskov Lane. Vladimir Putin was born on Tuesday, October 7, 1952, at Maternity Hospital Number 6, known locally as the Snegirov Hospital, 5 minutes walk from his parents' home on Baskov Lane, which, despite its name, was a straight, wide street of what had once been elegant 19th century apartment buildings, now shabby and dilapidated, just north of Leningrad's principal thoroughfare, Nevsky Prospect, leading to the Winter Palace. The hospital, founded in 1771 by Catherine the Great, was the oldest in Russia and the largest and reputedly the best in Leningrad. That was not saying a great deal. In Russian maternity clinics in those days, expectant mothers were crammed into filthy wards infested with cockroaches, with blood and feces on the floor and soiled bed linen, where they were left to the mercy of nurses who, when they were not sadistic, were often callous. It doesn't hurt when you're screwing your husband, does it? But now you're having a baby, you're wailing, one woman remembered a midwife telling her. Even at Snegiryov, Cleanliness was rudimentary and painkillers were unknown. Babies were separated from their mothers for 36 hours after birth. From the outset, it was survival of the fittest. One newborn in 50 died before leaving the hospital. Husbands were kept away, and Putin's father had to stand on the street outside with the other men, hoping to see his wife at one of the windows and to learn from her or another woman if the birth had gone well and whether he had a son or a daughter. So, what do you guys think of that? My personal feeling is you don't want to start a biography these days with the person was born on that day. We just don't have that kind of attention span. You don't want to start with that person was born. The other thing is you want to know something significant about Putin immediately. You want to go through what the hospital was like. You want to get to the meat of the thing, right? And I don't know. I'm struggling to continue. I sort of feel like I need to maybe jump ahead 2 or 3 chapters, and that's after the first page. Yeah, it is quite dry. Tonya, thanks a lot. Thanks for that. Yvonne says, okay. Yeah, so I mean, that was my perception. Maybe some of you did find it perfect. I just felt it was slow and a little bit plodding, but maybe he's coming to something that I haven't come to yet. So that's really my position. So you guys aren't going to believe it. I'm supposed to go and walk with Timmy again with the same person I was supposed to walk with your today, my yesterday, and we're going before dawn. So that's like in a couple of minutes. So I'm going to be saddling Timmy up. By the way, Timmy fell into a dam today. He was running along a dam wall, and a duck or something flew off or something like that. And the next thing I just heard this big splash, and he jumped into the water because there was, I think, a layer of what can you call it? Algae, I guess, not really algae. Some kind of growth on the surface of the water. I think he assumed that it was like a carpet or something, and of course he fell right through that, and the water was not that pleasant smelling. But I did manage to get him out of there. So he had quite an adventure today. So I am actually going to meet the same person I was supposed to meet, but this time before the sun comes up. She said it's really worth seeing the sun come up, so we're going to go and do that. He is okay. He just got a bit of a shock, and he got completely wet. And the water, as I say, is a little foul smelling. So Timmy doesn't smell terribly good. I did hose him off, but he could do with a proper bath. In fact, he actually needs a proper shave. Good for his immune system. Yvonne says, "Did you eat seafood?" I did have seafood. Yes. Yeah, he definitely is quite stinky. That's definitely the case. Okay, so remember we're going to do Van Gogh letters number 32 tomorrow, a little bit earlier than now, but around about this time, maybe 2 or 3 hours earlier. We're going to be doing Van Gogh letters, and we're going to again try to navigate to the time of that he does the painting that sort of acknowledges his father. So we're going to try and do that. Mel, it's just pre-dawn. It's sort of the sun's starting to come out, so that's really the idea. Thanks a lot. Have a great walk. Unfortunately, my knee that I hurt weeks ago still hurts. I can walk, but I think I'm going to need surgery. And I'm very bummed out about that, because if the surgery goes wrong, then you can have very permanent damage. So I'm definitely, I feel, in a way, the knee injury is worse than the broken rib. In a way, the knee injury is more serious than the broken rib. I didn't need surgery for the broken rib. Looks like I may need surgery for this. So I'm definitely feeling quite blue about that. Terry says, when do you sleep? Well, I'm a machine. What is sleep? Uh, Ricardo says, cast first. Yeah, I think I do need surgery. I'm trying to avoid surgery, but it's been, I think, 2 months and my knee still hurts. I can't run on it. So, okay. Thanks a lot, guys, for your attention. I think we read a couple of interesting excerpts. Remember, this is my book, Bloodline. If you want to read this version, let me see if I can find it for you guys on this. Let's see if I can just pick it up. I can't remember if Stephanie put that in chat, but here it is, just in case she didn't. So it's this book, right? And you can see it's so far being reviewed quite positively, which is quite cool. 191 pages, so check it out. Okay, let's have a look at your last. Why is it not allowing me to put the proper link there? Let's try this link. If you click on that link, I'm not sure if it's going to take you there. Will this link work? Maybe this one will work. There we go. Oh, did Steph put it in chat? Oh, okay. Did I lose weight? No, if anything, I think I put on weight. Sending snuggles and scratches to Timmy. Scratches. It's not on Audible. Yeah, I mean, that is definitely something that I would love to do ASAP, is get this book on as an audiobook. I'd love to do that. I think in order to do that, I need to not make YouTube videos every day. Like I just don't have the resources, because it takes a lot out of you to narrate a book the way your own book, the way you want it narrated, and the amount it takes out of your voice, but also your soul. I just wouldn't be able to do that and make YouTube videos. I would have to do one or the other for a while. Thanks a lot, Yvonne. I hope it's worthwhile to you. I must also point out, Yvonne, that Bloodline starts with like it starts with a prologue, and then there's also an introduction. So there's a preface, there's a prologue, and then there's also just kind of the narrative just sort of kicks off. And I don't know whether I should remove that from the book, because sometimes the book just needs to start. And that's why when I read it to you, I started at chapter 1. So I'm actually wondering whether to take the preface, the prologue, and there's actually arguably even another introduction out. On the other hand, if this book was supposed to become like a Lord of the Rings, and then you kind of want a lot of that ancillary stuff. In other words, it's telling you this was the world engine that I was sort of making. Um, this is the scale that I'm talking about, and also this is the perspective that I'm coming from. That's maybe sometimes good to come to in hindsight. So maybe the preface and so on should go to the back of the book. I don't know. Oh, do I look like that? Okay. I think it's just because maybe I'm not wearing a hat. Maybe, I don't know. Onesie says, thanks. Great reading for winter time. Hashtag Team Peachtree. So the next thing I'm hoping to do with Team Peachtree is maybe going to be on Wednesday or so. Will be on meeting the voice of cycling. So the how I met Phil Liggett, but also my journey as a sports writer and to some extent as a cyclist. Some of the photos I took, some of the people that I met, some of the articles that I wrote, and obviously the highlight of all that was meeting Phil Liggett at the Chelsea Tour of South Africa and what that was like, and then a little bit more about him and also how I got fired has also got to do with cycling. How I got fired from probably the most, how can I put it? Probably the most serious job I ever had in my life, the most credible job I've ever had in my life, how I actually got fired from that. So I'll take you guys through that. It's meant to be an affirmative story. It's not meant to be moaning or criticizing or analyzing. It's just meant to be an interesting voyeurism into cycling stories and the life of an investigative writer, me, covering that sort of thing. And some of the people that I met, that's quite interesting. I'll try and dig out photos that I've taken and articles that I've written, but that probably won't be a very long thing. Probably will be an hour or so. Don't be late for your walk. I've still got about 25 minutes, so I do have enough time. Okay. Thanks everyone for being here. Remember, this is going to be members only, probably from after episode 5, so bear that in mind. Thank you to the new members. Everyone who orders a book, we'd love to get your feedback. You must tell me, thanks so much for recommending the book, or I'm so sorry, I thought you were totally wrong. I read the book and it was horrible. The other thing is you're welcome to come in with your own book suggestions. And I really don't mind if you guys come on as guests and read from books that you like, or even books that you don't like. We do actually want to have Stephanie as a guest reading Lullaby, and also Lisa Wilson as a guest talking. I still want to get her to talk about our Oscar journey. And I think it'll be very colorful having her on. And I think she's pretty much available to do that now. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay. Black Tea says, I'm no bookworm, but I certainly appreciate what you do. Thanks a lot. Okay, True Jedi Forever. And I'll also be coming back to Elvis. We will still finish our analysis there. Okay. Take care, guys. Have a wonderful Sunday. I'll see you later.